Welcome to LollieTasking with ADHD. I am your host, Dr. Lollity, a multi-passionate mom of three, a physician, and an ADHD life coach because, like most of you amazing women listening, I have ADHD. Join me as we chat about how ADHD affects our lives and learn strategies to help us all thrive, not just survive, with ADHD so we can live the life we want while accomplishing all our goals. Let's get started. Hello, LollieTaskers. Again, I'm Dr. Lollity, a physician and ADHD trained life coach. And as you guys know, I teach easily distracted women, be it busy, overwhelmed mom, or women with ADHD, easy strategic ways to maximize their time and focus while decreasing overwhelm. Oh my gosh. So they can finally reach their full potential with ease and have a fulfilled life. I know that's a mouthful, guys. But today I have a special guest, guys. I have the amazing Caroleen Verly, who is a financial coach. Let me tell you a little bit about her. So Caroleen was a former data analyst and turned entrepreneurial and financial coach. She has a degree in economics from Yale. And prior to launching her business, she worked as a data analyst for 12 years across like environmental economic consulting world and higher education. Like who would have want someone like that to teach us, right? Sustainable sector. She is a wife to two wonderful young children, ages 1 and 7, and I want to hear all about it, how she does it. And she gives credit to COVID-19. Listen, COVID has not always been bad, thank God, in some cases, for kickstarting her business. So, welcome to the podcast, Caroleen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and, how you help women with ADHD?
Sure. So I'll start off with talking a little bit about what financial coaching is, because it's a pretty new piece of the financial services industry and sector. So a lot of people are actually not familiar yet with what financial coaches do. So it's really it's people who specialize in helping people with really the fundamentals of personal finance. So it's how to set a budget, how to set up good systems with your bank accounts, how many bank accounts to open, how to manage a credit card, how to manage your debit card. So really those fundamental pieces of personal finance. And it's not the pieces that you would generally seek out a financial advisor for or a financial planner. The financial advisors and financial planners really specialize in helping people with long-term planning. So planning for retirement. Financial advisors will also be the ones who advise on investments to make, so stocks and bonds and those types of things. So financial coaches don't touch those pieces, the long-term planning piece or the investments piece. So financial coaches really are experts on the budgeting, the day-to-day sort of money management pieces, which are core and fundamental to everybody. And so it's definitely a new and growing industry that I'm happy to be a part of, because it's really exciting to be able to help people solve these challenges that they're having that they otherwise did not know where to seek out help.
It's so interesting you say that because I tend to do a lot of analogy with money and time when it comes to ADHD. And I always talk about how if you don't have the fundamentals, just like, you have your foundation, right? If you don't have that foundation, you can build a better structure. And I find that a lot of and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of my clients with ADHD who have money issues, it's not that they can't make the money. It's not that they don't know what stocks to invest in some cases. But a lot of times it's the structure that is missing. And I feel like that's where you come in. Would you say?
That's exactly right. Yeah. I think the best way to think about what I do is that I'm really like an organizer for your finances.
Mm.
And so generally the story I hear from my clients is, they come to me, they say, okay, I think I make a lot of money, or, I make more money than what I'm feeling. So like I'm having a hard time paying off my credit card bill every month, but I don't know why, because I make a good income. Um, and so it's really about systems, like you're saying, and having smart systems in place. Um, because yeah, it's those fundamentals, and it can be more work up front to set up a good system, but a good system should be something that you don't have to maintain too much over time. That's really by default, it works and you have success by default. Um, and I love that you say that you use an analogy of time and money, because I also do that as often. I think there are two kind of main principles that I see with time and money. And one is that, sort of like with time, whatever task you take, it will expand or contract to fit the amount of time that you have. So if you have 5 minutes, or if you have $5, you will spend those 5 minutes or those $5. But if you have $500 or 500 minutes, you can spend that time. So, money and time, I think it's a great analogy. And it's also an analogy that I use in terms of, when I work with women to set up their different bank accounts, we often will set up a separate spending account for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I talk about that account is it's sort of like checking your watch. So, how do you know whether you can afford to buy a concert ticket, or go to a restaurant, or go on a vacation, or, buy something for your kids? How do you know you can afford it? And so it's sort of like checking your watch. Like, do you have time to, you know make dinner before you have to go leave for work?
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess that would not make sense for most people's schedules, but
Sometimes,
the
yeah,
idea, yeah, so some people
may need
that
to do the crock pot first thing, right?
there you
So
go, yeah.
hey.
But it's the same with money, that if you have a checking account that is your dedicated sort of discretionary spending money, it's the same thing. If you want to know if you have money in the bank to do something, you can check it. And often my clients will come to me, they're sort of operating in a way that they generally don't know if they can spend the money or not. Um, and it's a very stressful way to live, because even if you can afford to do something, if you're constantly questioning whether you can or not, it's really stressful. But if you have your bank account, sort of like a watch, can give you a very unbiased answer of, can you afford it or not? Do you have the money for it, or do you have the time for it? The watch is, so I like to set up the account system so that it's sort of that same clarity that you get from a watch. The watch will tell you, how many minutes do you have, and can you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in that time or not?
So you talk about setting up different accounts. Like what, like, let's say a single woman now, because I know when you're married it's a little different. Like how many accounts do you recommend people with ADHD have?
So each person is a little bit different, but I would say most people, when they come to me, and most people, the way that they're managing their finances, is they have one checking account and one savings account.
Mhm.
Um, and and it can be even though on the surface that sounds like it's the simplest system, because you only have two accounts, it can actually be really complicated to manage your money out of those two accounts. And what I see a lot is, people have a credit card that then they pay from their checking account, and every once in a while they'll move money to their savings account, and then if they're short, they'll move money back out of the savings account. But there's not a system to
Mhm.
it. And so the first thing I'll generally recommend is that we increase the number of accounts that somebody has. And generally that's probably, one, but somewhere between like adding 1 to 4 checking accounts, and potentially adding a second savings account. Um, and so for different people, it's a little bit different. And what I work with clients on is creating a map of where their money is flowing.
Mhm.
And so generally we'll have one account that's dedicated just for their bills. So these are the things that you're paying every month. It's your rent
Mhm.
or your mortgage, your car payment. Um, if you have childcare, it's your childcare bills. It's all the things that how much it's going to be, and it's coming every month. Um, Put those in one account and coming out of one account, because then it's much clearer that way when you have a second account that is more for your living expenses, like your groceries, your gas money. Um, so that could be a separate account. And that way, I think a lot of people, their default system is that they try to figure out if they can afford something based on the amount in their checking account. But the problem with that system, if you only have one account, is that some of the money that's in your checking account today, some of it has to go for your rent, that's due in, let's see, it's the 12th. So like, in 2 weeks, some of that money is allocated to your rent payment for August. And some of that money needs to go to your credit card bill that's coming in 3 days. And so if you only have one account, it can be very confusing because all that money is mixed together. So I generally like to have one bills account, um, a living expenses account. So those are the things that are more essential than pure discretionary funds, but it's things that you do have some control over, like groceries, gas. For some people, it's haircuts. There's sort of a gray line of what do you include and not include in each account. But then the third one is one that is much more the discretionary pieces. So that's money for restaurants or traveling, the things that you could cut in a financial emergency, that enrich your life, but are not essential to your day-to-day living. And then on the savings account front, definitely have a dedicated emergency fund. That's sort of the number one thing that you can do to start building up your financial resiliency is setting money aside every month from every paycheck. And often I'll recommend to clients, especially my ADHD clients, that emergency fund should actually be at a separate bank, not the bank that you use every day for your other accounts, because out of sight, out of mind, the money does add up fast if you are diligent about sending it there. And when I say diligent, everything that we want to automate as much as we can, especially for clients with ADHD. Just set up the system so it'll work whether or not you remember to take certain steps, or whether you're feeling like you want to deal with it in that day. Computers are really good at achieving our goals for us if we tell them what we want. So how much money you're going to put aside into that emergency fund. And I like having it at a separate bank because it just puts a few speed bumps in between you and the money. So if you need it in an emergency, you can access it, but you don't see it every day. You're not tempted to say, okay, well, I'm out of my discretionary savings money. Maybe if I could just take a few $100s out of my emergency fund. If it's out of sight, it's a little bit harder to touch, but in an emergency, it's there. And then, then depending on, the client's specific situation, we may have different accounts. So if somebody is a homeowner, or they own a car, then it's great to have a home and car repair fund, because those are things that, we may hope that they won't happen, but things, they always do. So you will need a new roof at some point. You will need a new boiler. You will need a new, new brakes for your car. Like, they will happen. You just don't know when.
Facts.
And yeah, it's sort of wishful thinking to think it won't, but those are the types of predictable emergencies. So that's why I like to have that separate from the true emergency fund. And then, if somebody has a specific goal, so if they are currently renting and they have a goal to become homeowners, or let's say they have a goal to take a dream vacation, have a separate savings account for that specific goal. So depending on the client, we'll have a few more, or it could be earmarked for any purpose that's important to the client. And what I find with multiple accounts, like on the surface, it sounds like, oh, well, you've just taken 2 accounts and now have 8 accounts. It's much more complicated, but it's actually much simpler because each account has a clear, dedicated purpose. And you had the same purpose as before, but you were mixing everything together into 2 accounts. So now it's much clearer. It's like a box of colored pencils, and you can see them all. They're not just muddled together in one color. And the other thing is, when you have these separate accounts, especially the separate savings goals, it can be really hard when you only have one account. It can be really hard to find the motivation to save towards it because you don't really know what you're saving for. It's just your savings, and it's just not very inspirational. You don't, should I spend the money today or should I put it in my savings? But you don't have a specific purpose for it. So it's much more motivating to have a specific goal for each of your savings buckets. And then on the other side, when it comes time to spend that money, if you just have one general pot of money for your savings, psychologically, it can be very hard to spend that money because you wonder, like,
I'm
oh,
supposed to save it.
yeah, exactly. It's my savings. I'm not supposed to spend it.
Yeah.
But the whole reason of saving money is to spend it later.
For a purpose.
For a purpose, exactly. And so if you designate that purpose ahead of time, when you spend the money that you set aside for your dream vacation, you can spend it without that cloud of guilt hanging over you of, can I really spend this? should I really do this? Like, can I buy this coffee on vacation? And that's a stressful way to live. And so if you can have a dedicated purpose and okay, this was the money I set aside for my vacation, I can spend it guilt-free. And that's, so yeah, so those are all the benefits of having multiple accounts. So it's a very long answer to, I think,
No, it's
somewhere
not a
around
long
8.
No, it's not a long answer, and I appreciate you breaking it down because I have something similar. Because a lot of people think, oh my gosh, so many accounts, I'm gonna be so stressed. I think I probably have like 5 or 6 accounts. Um, and I think 4 of them I don't have cards to because they're different savings accounts. There's like I have like two high used to be high yield account, but it's not really high yield anymore. I Vacation and rest is very important for me and my family. So we save towards that. And it's interesting. We're like, you guys take expensive. We're like, we saved for this, because just like I said, we ADHD, like in life in general and with time, if you don't know your destination, you end up just roaming around. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's the same with finances too. You kind of have to have a purpose and a goal of where you're going with things. And it doesn't necessarily mean I want to buy a house. It could be I want to go to a concert. It could be, like the joy you're staying and not just like working to live. Like we should actually living to work. I said that
Mhm.
opposite. Not living to work and actually working to live. And I think it's very important. And I actually have a program coming up called Creating Systems to Thrive because I'm a very, very big proponent on systems and automation for ADHD. And when people hear automation, they think, oh my gosh, like technical or computers. Yes, computer is part of it, but automation for me is do it so I don't have to stress about it. Because
Mhm.
I feel like with our ADHD brain, the more we have to think about it, the more it doesn't get done.
Mhm.
Right? So when it's just
Mhm.
automated and left alone, like I have so many automated amount coming out of I have like my main account where everything comes in and it's a input account and then I have output accounts. And even with my business, I don't know if you guys know about Profit First. I use Profit First for my business as well, you know, and it uses the same principles of like, breaking it. So I'm so glad you said that. We're
Mhm.
vibing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's automating things is the biggest key to success. And it's more work up front, so there is that hurdle to get past, but you reap the benefits for years and years down the road because if you set up auto payments for your credit card and all your bills, they'll flow automatically, and it's impossible to forget to pay it because it's going to
Absolutely.
get paid for you.
Yeah,
And
I
the same.
literally
Go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt, hashtag ADHD. I literally have I literally have 2 bills that are now automated. And the only reason why those 2 bills are not automated, one is credit card, obviously. Like, I pay off my credit card every week. But the second one is my electric bill because they overcharged me once. And I was like, never again. But I also have a reminder,
Mhm.
you know, that reminds me, okay, you have to do it. And when I do that, I also like when I go pay our electric bill, then I also review all the other bills because that's where automation can get us ADHD, right? Review all the other bills, which will probably take you like 10 minutes as opposed to an hour if you have to like click credit cards for every bill, right?
Mhm.
And it's like the best thing. I don't know why some people are so against automating your bills, but I think it works for me. What have you noticed that about certain people like they like just don't want to automate their bills? What do you think is the barrier to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have seen that. I've run into that resistance from clients. And I think oftentimes it's a fear, sort of like what you mentioned with the electric bill, especially with credit card payments.
Mhm.
And it's sort of this fear that, I think they want to pay it manually because they want to be able to check the bill before they pay it.
Mhm.
Um, and and so I have several thoughts on that. But one is that, well, the credit card companies, they, even if you've paid the bill and you discover fraud later, they're great about covering you for that fraud. Like, you will not be liable for it, even if you paid the bill. Um, and so I think it's much better to set up a separate system where you're checking the amounts on the bill, but separate that from the payment piece. And so I
I
think
like that
that,
actually.
yeah. So well, and I think that clients are using that as a strategy to accomplish both things, both purposes in one go. But the risks of not paying off a credit card bill and just missing one payment can have big impacts on your credit score. And so that's definitely something to avoid, as much as you can. So,
Right.
even if you're making less than the full payment, obviously the full payment is ideal, but missing a payment is much, much worse than making a partial payment. Um, and so yeah, so I think I I often set up other systems for clients to keep track of, reviewing those bills, like you mentioned, the electric bill, but still putting them on autopilot, but then reviewing them separately.
So have
And
like a separate day of the month or whatever. Like I'm just reviewing my bills today, but then everything else is automated. I
Mhm,
actually like that. I like that. I think with me, with my credit card is really, I use it like cash.
mhm,
And I have to pay it off every month unless in my I mean every month, every week, unless in my ADHD I forget. So me putting that reminder to pay it off every week forces me to see, okay, how much do I have in my account? Because I'm really using it more for the points
mhm,
than the. So I see my credit card as cash versus, you know, quote unquote credit card. So
mhm,
that's why I feel like I have to. And I've gotten to a point where it's now automated for me. Like just like anything, I tell people all the time in the beginning, it's hard, but
mhm.
the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and then the more you don't have to think about it. So Saturday morning, I'm like, oh crap, I didn't pay my this on Friday. Like I just feel very uneasy when I don't do it. So that's worked perfectly for me. But I actually think that's why having a financial coach is amazing, right? Especially with people with ADHD, because a lot of times we know what to do, but it's actually that initiation. We have a little bit of anxiety or procrastination or whatever, or overwhelm a lot of times too. Um, and especially with money, just like with time, when we get overwhelmed with our ADHD, we just don't do anything.
Mhm.
But just like time costs you, money also costs you. So you actually being in denial and not actually facing it is actually costing you more than just hiring a coach to help you. What do you say about that?
Well, that's a question I get often, well, how does it make sense to pay somebody to help me when my problem is that I don't have enough money to pay my other bills? Um, and so it really is, like you said, it's an investment in yourself and figuring out how to, get to the end goal faster, because, carrying credit card debt is costing you a lot of money. And, not only is having the debt costing you money, but it's also costing you your peace, your mental peace, and your how much space you have in your brain for your other pursuits. And um, so there can be a lot of challenges associated with, you know having whatever the financial difficulty that you're facing is. It's having a big toll on you, both emotionally and financially. And so I often, I find clients who, they get to a certain point where they are ready to accept help and they are ready to seek out help. Um, and I think a good, yeah, the analogy I like to come back to is the organizer. When your home
Mm.
is in such a state of disarray that you just need help. Um, that that's the time to seek somebody out to help you. But it's an interesting place to be, where you're helping people who are struggling with their money, but you're also charging them money to do it. um, but yeah, it's like any other service. And like you mentioned, I think especially for people with ADHD, it's the systems that we set up are things that they can take with them, for years,
Rest of your life, yeah.
lifetime.
Hmm.
um, but it's the upfront work of setting it up, and it's the accountability of actually doing it. Like none of what we do is actually that complicated or challenging. It's not rocket science. It's pretty basic math. Um, but it's finding the time and making the time to do it and to do what you need to do and you want to do, but having
Mhm.
somebody there who can help you kind of put some structure in place and hold you accountable to doing the things that you need to do. And um, I don't make any guarantees of money saved from working with me, but I think so many times people end up getting they get a financial return on their investment
Mhm.
as well as a greater peace of mind and clarity on their money is, I think, a big one that generally when clients come to me, they just feel very confused. It's just their money is this big dark cloud that's hanging over them and is confusing. And so we work on, uh, hence the name of the business, untangling all the threads and putting them back together in a
Absolutely.
system that makes sense.
I love that you talked about it being like organization, and my clients would tell you this too. Like when they're like, my house is, I'm like, get an organizer. You need someone to just clear it out
Mm.
first. And then they organize it in the way it's supposed to be. Then you could keep going with
Mhm.
it. So I just love that you say that. But going into organization, how do you organize financial paperwork? Like that, I have what I do. I'm a digital person. I try to just scan everything and put it in files. Well, how do you organize things? Digitally or maybe papers too? Because if you have a home, have insurance, like, oh my gosh, the papers don't stop.
Right. Yeah, no, the papers definitely don't stop. Yeah, I would say I'm not a paper organization expert, but I like a simple system for papers too, like any financial papers that you get. I recommend just keeping them by year. So I think a lot
Mm,
of times the hurdle of taking, if you have your file cabinet and you have, one folder for your car and one folder for your house and one folder for, your medical expenses, another folder for your pets. It's finding the time and the activation energy required to take things and file them into the different categories is much higher than just having a 2022 folder, and
mm,
just putting everything in one place. And then when you need it, you have where to go looking for it. And you
mm,
have, let's say you need all of your pets medical bills, you can just go find them in
mm.
one spot, but then you'll have the motivation that you're actually looking for them, and then they're not kind of strewn all over your house. So I would say either digitally or physically, just keeping them in one spot is much better than doing nothing. Um, and and I think accomplishes 90% of the value of sorting them and organizing them into subcategories.
Yeah. So simplicity, don't overcomplicate
Mm.
things, huh?
Yeah.
That's always the key to ADHD. So, what about impulse spending? Do you have clients that have that, and how do you help them deal with that?
Yeah, that's another good question. So I think the best thing is to have more clarity on what the limits actually are. Um, and so, oftentimes if somebody is, you know, spending money impulsively, they're not buying a yacht. They're buying, smaller items. And I think that mentally we kind of set where that threshold is of what we can afford, um, and so having a separated account where you have your spending money, and so it's very clearly delineated, and that's oftentimes I'll actually recommend clients don't use credit cards. Not that credit cards are a bad tool, but it's a much simpler tool is just to manage your checking account with a debit card, especially if you're in the early phases of straightening out your money, and setting up better systems for yourself. So things like having if you have a separate discretionary spending account that you can spend on, clothes or restaurants or whatever it is, and having a debit card tied to it, I think makes much more intuitive sense, because as you spend money, you see the amount declining. So you see, oh, I have only $200 left. Oh, I only have $40 left, and you see it go down to zero, as opposed to a credit card, which is hard to make intuitive sense of because the amount goes up, but then your checking account. So it's sort of like you have to, you know, do some math,
Be
mental math.
intentional.
So I think that, yeah, that goes a long way.
Absolutely. No, I have to agree with that. If you're in the beginning of like money management, don't do what I do. Like make it simple, like I feel like I'm at this. I've always been pretty good with money, but like I think I'm at this point where I'm more of like investing and capitalization than actual organization of money. But it took me knowing how to organize my money and knowing that, okay, yes, I want to get points because I love to travel and I love to use those points. And we spend a lot of bills in this house. So how can I do it where I'm not overspending, right? So that's why it's a must. I pay off my bill every
Mhm.
week, which forces me to look at my checking account. And I'm like, oh crap, next week I can buy so much.
Right.
Um, so that's one. Another thing I do recommend, and I don't know if you do this as well, is if you have impulsive spending, guys, don't do auto pay with your iPhone.
Mhm.
Apple Pay is the worst. Don't do it. Don't do automatic PayPal on your phone. Don't do what else? Amazon, like automatic Amazon. Like have some kind of roadblock that makes you actually think before you do it. Like having to go get the credit card to do it, on those places where you're not good at holding yourself back, right? If you have your favorite store, don't save your credit card on that
Mhm.
store's website, right? You can make it easier. If you're good with Apple Pay, that's great and it helps you with other things, but maybe limit the different sites because I have a particular site I have to be like, no, we're going to delete our credit card from this site because every time I come like, oh, but that's nice. Like it's never gonna be there if I don't get it right now, right now, right now. Um, and with impulsive spending, another thing I also encourage my clients to do, and this is more ADHD, not necessarily money management, is like having like a set threshold,
Mhm.
right? Like if I'm going to spend more than $100, I have to wait a day. If I want to spend more than $1,000, I have to wait 2 days, no matter how amazing it is, and blah, 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 blah. When I have done that, it helped a lot of like my impulsive spending more because then it actually gives you time to think through it and actually decide, do I really need this or do I just want this, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times I feel like with impulsive spendings are like the wants instead of the need.
Exactly.
So those are some things. So was there anything else you wanted to tell us before we round it up?
Well, I'll just add one more is unsubscribe from any of those store emails that are tempting. That's another big one. If it's not in your
Yes.
inbox, then you won't think to go and spend it. And yeah, this all these stores with their sales, their constant sales, they're really good at creating this false sense of urgency that
Mhm.
oh, it's 50% off today, but
It
the
will
sale
be in
ends at
2 weeks.
midnight. Yeah, but they'll have a new sale tomorrow, and
Mhm.
but they're very good at that. But I would say, yeah, automation as much as you can. Um, and I think I hear a lot from women especially, that they feel like they're bad with money.
Mm.
And that is sort of to what you were saying of, you're at a higher level in your financial world than you were before. Um,
Mhm.
that's something I really encourage people to, not put themselves down. It's not money management is not something that almost anybody was taught in school. Probably
Mhm.
your parents didn't teach you either. There's sort of this understanding that everyone will know what to do, but nobody teaches you. So how could you actually know? Um, and so I find a lot of clients who just put themselves down and say, "Oh, I'm bad with money and I can't do this." But it's kind of dialing it back to let's start at step one, and let's then ramp up to step two. And don't have 10 credit cards right now, but if you want 10 credit cards 3 years from now to optimize all the points and you have a good system, then that can work better. But yeah, just sort of recognizing that it's a learned skill and anyone can learn it. It's the math is simple, but it's really putting into place good systems and starting simple and, ramping up the complexity as you get more comfortable with it.
Absolutely. And it really does start with just like with anything. Another analogy I use is building because my dad's an architect. But with anything you want to build, it starts with foundation. And the foundation is so important. Once you get the minimum foundation, then you can get like the what we call the cornerstones. The cornerstones are the systems and the structure to get you going. So if you're listening to us and you're like, oh my gosh, why are they talking to me? I need to get my money in order. Why don't you reach out to her, Curly? Because start with the foundation and then work your way. Let's not worry about crypto coins right now. Let's start. Let's start with the basics. So, if someone is, or well, even before then, I have two more questions actually. Number one, what is a good app to track your money? They said like Mint. And what is the best system for saving? Oh, I think I asked about the saving and filing.
Mhm.
Um, best app for money.
So yeah, there are a lot of apps out there right now. I have not even tried them all myself. I think mint.com is a great place to start. It's
Mhm.
free. But the reason it's free is that credit card companies and other
To
financial
sell your stuff.
services
I had to
selling you
cancel.
stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it can be a good place to start because it's free, but it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's the best tool out there. Um, the tool I like to use with my clients is something called Tiller. Um,
Mm,
and if you Google them, their website is tillerhq.com. And similar to Mint, it connects to all of your accounts and it harvests all of your financial data across multiple accounts. So once we set up multiple accounts and, if you have a credit card and you have your 401k through your work and, if you're
mhm,
tracking your spouse's accounts too, um, just like Mint, it will give you that view into all of your accounts at the same time.
mhm.
But what I love about it, especially for ADHD clients, and I have not yet met a client who did not like having this tool. It's great because the data gets dumped into an Excel sheet or a Google sheet. So you're not actually learning a new app or a new system. And especially, when you're working with a financial coach who can help you set it up, the setup is definitely the hardest piece of it, um, but it's really intuitive and simple to manage because once that data is in a spreadsheet, then you can easily manipulate it and look at it whatever way makes sense in your mind. Um, and you can see all the numbers right there. I find a lot of the apps are kind of like black boxes that
Mm,
you don't know what's going on. Like with Mint,
mhm.
Mint will automatically categorize things into different categories, and they often will get things wrong. And so then you're like, oh, why did I spend so much money on my car? And it's like, oh well, it
Right.
like incorrectly allocated one like your vacation or whatever it
Mhm.
was. Mint
To
sometimes is too smart.
transportation.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
too smart for its own good.
Right, right.
So it's a great place to start, but
Okay.
it's not
Taylor,
the place I
and
get.
do you mind spelling that out? That way our audience can like Google. Is it
Sure.
Tiller?
That's right.
Oh,
Tiller.
okay.
And I don't remember their pricing. I think it's like $70 for the year.
Okay.
Um,
Not
and
too bad. Again, another investment, right?
mhm,
And the reason why we invest is to maximize our lives. So, all right. So the one question I always ask on my guest is if out of everything we said, one thing with ADHD is we like to do everything at once. And I always recommend to my clients and my audience just pick one thing and work on it this week.
mm.
So out of everything we have spoken about, what is if if they're like, I'm gonna forget everything, but what is that one thing I just need to do? What would you say it is?
I think I would start with making a list of all of your fixed expenses. So all of your bills, all of your, kind of the parts of your life that you have committed to spending a certain amount of money. So your rent, your mortgage, your car payment. Um, just make a list of them and add up how much that costs because that's a number that you need to have kind of at the tip of your tongue and at the front of your brain when you're thinking about your money so that when you then the next layers beyond that you'll look at how much is coming in and how much is going to other places, but knowing what are your core expenses that you are committed to pay every month is a great first step to take. So get a Google spreadsheet or a Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper and a calculator and just make a list of all the things that you pay every month, and add them up.
Awesome. Yes, I agree with that. Like again, awareness, right? If you don't have the awareness, then you can't move forward.
Mhm.
So how can someone reach out to you? Like, I really want to untangle my finances. How can I get you? I need you so badly.
Well, I have a website, untangleyourmoney.com. And on there, if you're interested in having a quick chat, I have free 20-minute consultation calls where you can tell me a little bit about your situation, and I can tell you more about my process of working with clients, and we can see if it's a good fit. I am not a high pressure salesperson at all. So if it is the wrong fit, I'm happy to send clients to somebody who is a better fit. So I have a network of other financial coaches and financial planners and other people in the financial industry. So don't hesitate to schedule a call if it's of interest to you.
Awesome. And I hope if you really do have concerns about your finances, please reach out to Caroline. I'm sure she'll be fantastic. Like she's a wealth of knowledge already, as you can hear. Check her out. I'm going to put all her information in our show notes so you can get to her. And if do you have a social media or something they can contact you on?
I have an
Instagram? Okay.
Instagram at ADHD Money, all
Okay.
one word.
Awesome. See, ADHD money, simple. She
Yep.
kept it simple for you guys. All right. So reach out at ADHD money, untanglemoney.com. Is that what you said?
Untangle your money.
Your money. Don't forget
Untangle
the
your
your.
money. Yeah.
Untangleyourmoney.com. That way she can help you untangle your money. I totally love that name. It makes me, I'm like, I want to untangle my money. Who doesn't want to untangle their money? All right. So in Lolly summary today, guys, I have had an amazing time talking to Caroline and all about our money. Like I tell people all the time, the two most important investment in life, believe it or not, time and money. So what better way to get with Caroline, get your money under control. And then when you're done with Caroline, come beat me, okay? Like you guys know, if you're listening to this in the future, I'm sorry, this only happens twice a year, but I'm having an amazing opportunity on August 13th, which helps busy moms or women or people with ADHD who are ready to truly accomplish their goals. It's going to be a day of implementation. And all we're doing is creating systems. We're going to create systems for our house, our family, our children, our finances, our work. It's a full day. Do you know why this is important? Again, foundation. Because if you don't have that foundation, it's hard to really get on top of it. So if you really want to get with us, go ahead and click the link. It's going to be on the show note. And if you miss it and you listen to this after the 30th, that's okay. We do it twice a year. We'll catch you again in 2023. However, if you're listening now, don't wait till then. Just go ahead and sign up for that. And if you're like, no, I want you to coach me, Dr. Lola, yay! Go ahead and also sign up at accomplishwithease.com or LollieTasking.com. I would love you to be part of our amazing coaching and accountability group. So that being said, I just want to thank you again, Caroline, for an amazing day talking about money. I love money. Who doesn't love money? I love money. But for you to love money, you got to make money work for you, right? So part of it is like, the money management. That's why I thought this was very, very important. So any last words before we round up?
Thank you so much for having me. I also love talking about money. This is my job.
Yay.
I was happy to be here.
Awesome. Also, thank you guys so much for an amazing episode. Again, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. If you have any questions, please don't be a stranger. Reach out to us at hello@lollietasking.com, or you can reach us at LollieTasker on Instagram. And also, you can join our Facebook group, which is Women with ADHD. Go ahead. All the links are going to be in the show note. Okay. But till next time, just remember you can do it too. But with some planning, a little bit of balance, and a dash of determination. This is LollieTasking with ADHD. Bye-bye. Thanks for hanging out with us on another episode of LollieTasking with ADHD. If you like what you've heard today, I would love for you to click the subscribe button, rate, and leave a great review, in addition to sharing with your friends. Your review allows visibility and also allows other amazing women to find this podcast. Also, if you have any questions or topics you would like for us to discuss, please contact me via direct message on Instagram at LollieTasker or email us at hello@LollieTasking.com. Till next time, this is LollieTasking with ADHD.